For about 4 years, I have been saving to have some plastic surgery. A mommy makeover, they call it. Perkier boobs, a tummy tuck to get rid of the loose skin and stretch marks I have left from bearing 3 children. Every month, without fail, money has just been taken out of my account, automatically transferred into a separate fund that I wouldn't touch. It became almost sacred in a way, this little nest egg growing quietly in the background of my busy life. There is now about $30,000 in there. 30,000. Enough to book the surgeries I wanted. Enough to finally fix what I thought was broken. I remember the first time I really looked at myself after my 3rd baby. My youngest had just turned 6 months old, and I was standing in our bathroom, the door locked because I needed this moment alone. The mirror was still foggy from the shower, and as I wiped it clear with my hand, I saw her. This woman with tired eyes and a body that looked like it had been through a war. And in some ways, it had. 3 pregnancies. 3 deliveries. 3 tiny humans who had stretched and changed and marked me in ways I never imagined when I was younger, when my stomach was flat and my breasts sat high and firm. The stretch marks weren't delicate silver lines like you see in those body-positive Instagram posts. They were deep, purple-red canyons that crisscrossed my lower abdomen like some kind of chaotic roadmap. My breasts, which had once been something I was proud of, now hung softer, emptier, like deflated balloons after a party nobody wanted to attend. And the loose skin around my middle, no matter how many crunches I did, no matter how clean I ate, it just stayed there. A permanent reminder of what my body had done, what it had sacrificed. I started researching that night. Mommy makeovers. Tummy tucks. Breast lifts and augmentations. I fell down rabbit holes of before and after photos, reading testimonials from women who said it changed their lives, who said they finally felt like themselves again. And I wanted that. God, I wanted that so badly. I wanted to look in the mirror and see the woman I remembered, not this tired, stretched-out version of her. So I started saving. $50 here, $100 there. Sometimes more when we had a good month. My husband knew, of course. He was supportive in that way husbands are when they don't really understand but they love you enough to say yes anyway. Whatever makes you happy, he'd say, kissing my forehead. And I'd smile and nod, because I believed it would. I believed that if I could just fix these physical things, everything else would fall into place. I'd feel confident again. Sexy again. Like myself again. The years passed. The fund grew. And every time I'd catch a glimpse of myself changing clothes or getting out of the shower, I'd think, soon. Soon you'll fix this. It became my mantra, my secret promise to myself. Just hold on a little longer. Just save a little more. And then you'll be whole again. I went and had a consultation with a plastic surgeon yesterday. Dr. Morrison. His office was in one of those sleek medical buildings downtown, all glass and steel and that particular smell of expensive air conditioning and hand sanitizer. The waiting room had leather chairs and art on the walls that was probably supposed to be calming, abstract swirls of blue and green that reminded me of ocean waves. There were magazines on the coffee table, the glossy kind that featured celebrities and their perfect post-baby bodies, and I remember thinking how fitting that was. How we were all here chasing the same impossible standard. When Dr. Morrison called me back, I felt this flutter in my chest. Excitement, nervousness, anticipation all mixed together. This was it. This was the beginning of my transformation. His examination room was bright and clinical, with those posters showing the layers of skin and muscle, the before and after photos of his previous patients lining one wall like a gallery of hope. He was professional, kind even. He listened as I explained what I wanted. As I talked with him about nipping here and tucking there and putting things back where they were before children, using my hands to show him where I wanted the changes, where I needed the fixes. He nodded, took notes, drew diagrams on his tablet showing me what he could do, how he could reshape this and lift that. And then, right in the middle of his explanation about incision points and recovery time, I just had this moment where I felt kind of outside of myself looking in. It was the strangest sensation, like I was floating above my own body, watching this woman sitting in a plastic surgeon's office, planning to cut herself open to achieve some version of beauty that maybe didn't even matter. There was a little voice telling me, not out loud, but clear as day in my head. How is this going to serve your life? It wasn't judgmental. It wasn't mean. It was just honest. How is this going to serve your life? Will perkier breasts make you a better mother? Will a flat stomach make you better at your job? Will removing these marks, these stories written on your skin, actually change anything that matters? And I realized. It won't. Perky boobs and a flat stomach just don't seem that important anymore. Not in the way they did when I started saving 4 years ago. Not in the way they did when I was lying awake at night, cataloging all my flaws in the darkness. Maybe because I've been in therapy the last few years, working through some of the deeper stuff, the real wounds that don't show up in mirrors. Maybe it's because I've gotten older and more comfortable in my skin, these 42 years of living finally teaching me something about what actually matters. I thanked Dr. Morrison for his time. I could see the confusion in his eyes as I gathered my purse and coat. I'm sure he thought I'd be back, that this was just cold feet, that the $30,000 sitting in my account would eventually bring me through his doors again. But I knew, even as I walked out of that office, that I wouldn't be coming back. Something had shifted. Something fundamental had changed in those few minutes of hovering outside myself. I was driving away from that appointment, my mind still spinning, still processing what had just happened. The radio was on, but I wasn't really hearing it. I was just driving on autopilot, the way you do when you've driven the same routes 1,000 times. And then I was driving by the university where I got my nursing degree. The old brick buildings, the quad where I used to study under the oak trees, the parking lot where I'd cried after my first truly difficult clinical rotation. On impulse, I pulled over. I didn't plan it. I didn't think it through. I just turned the wheel and found myself parking in a visitor spot, the engine ticking as it cooled, my hands still gripping the steering wheel. I sat there for a moment, looking at the building that housed the School of Nursing, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Possibility. Not the possibility of a smaller waist or higher breasts, but real possibility. The kind that makes your heart beat faster and your palms sweat just a little. I went into the admissions office. It was quieter than I expected, just a few students milling around, looking at brochures and talking in hushed voices. The woman at the desk looked up and smiled, one of those genuine smiles that makes you feel welcome immediately. "Can I help you?" she asked, and I heard myself say, "I'm interested in the master's program." The words felt foreign and familiar all at once. I made inquiries about the master's program, asking questions I didn't even know I had. What were the requirements? How long was the program? Could someone work full-time and still manage the course load? The admissions counselor, her name was Patricia, pulled up information on her computer, handed me a thick folder of materials, and talked about specializations and career trajectories and all these possibilities I had shoved aside years ago when I became a mother. I had always meant to go back for my master's. It was one of those someday plans, you know? Someday when the kids are older. Someday when we have more money. Someday when I have more time. But someday has a way of never arriving if you don't grab it by the throat and make it today. And sitting in that admissions office, holding that folder full of possibilities, I realized that my someday had just shown up, wearing the disguise of $30,000 and a cancelled plastic surgery consultation. Got some information and then drove home. The drive back was different than the drive there. I felt lighter, like I'd put down something heavy I'd been carrying without even realizing it. The same streets looked different. The same trees and buildings and stop signs, but all of it felt new somehow. My phone rang twice, my husband checking in, but I let it go to voicemail. I needed this quiet, this space to think, to feel what was happening inside me. When I got home, the house was in that beautiful chaos that happens with 3 kids. Backpacks dumped by the door, shoes scattered like landmines, the sound of the television competing with someone practicing piano scales in another room. My oldest, Emma, looked up from her homework as I walked in. "How'd it go?" she asked, and I realized she thought I'd just come back from booking my surgery. We'd talked about it, the kids and I. I'd been honest with them about wanting to make some changes, and they'd been supportive in that way kids are, not fully understanding but loving you anyway. Different than I expected, I told her, setting down my purse and the folder from the university. But good. Really good. So Morning, I went online and applied. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, still in my pajamas, and I filled out the application for the master's program in nursing. It felt surreal, typing in my information, uploading my transcripts from 15 years ago, writing the personal statement about why I wanted to pursue advanced education at this stage in my life. In that statement, I talked about my years as a floor nurse, about the patients I'd cared for, about the times I'd wished I had more knowledge, more skills, more tools to help people. I talked about wanting to specialize in women's health, about seeing so many women struggle with the same things I had struggled with, about wanting to be more than just a nurse who follows orders. I wanted to be someone who could make real changes, who could contribute to the field in meaningful ways, who could maybe help reshape how we think about women's bodies and healthcare and the aftermath of childbirth. I didn't mention the plastic surgery. I didn't mention the $30,000 or the stretch marks or the 4 years of saving. But in a way, it was all there, woven into every sentence. This was my story too, my transformation, just not the one I had originally planned. I've decided that the $30,000 is now going to go towards furthering my education and personal growth. When I made that decision, actually transferred the first tuition payment this afternoon, I expected to feel some regret. Some voice saying, "But what about your body? What about fixing yourself?" But there was nothing. Just this deep, profound sense of rightness. And I feel so at peace with it. Better than I felt in a long time. Maybe better than I've ever felt, if I'm being completely honest. The program is 2 years, part-time, designed for working nurses. I'll still be able to maintain my job, still be there for my kids, still be present for all the regular chaos of life. But I'll also be growing, learning, becoming something more. Not more than a mother or more than a nurse, but more fully myself. The version of myself that doesn't need surgical intervention to feel whole. I told my husband tonight over dinner. The kids were arguing about whose turn it was to clear the table, and I just blurted it out. I didn't book the surgery. I applied to grad school instead. The table went quiet. Even the kids stopped mid-argument to look at me. My husband put down his fork, and I saw this parade of emotions cross his face. Confusion, then understanding, then something that looked a lot like pride. "Tell me about it," he said, and so I did. I told them about the consultation, about that moment of clarity, about driving past the university and making an impulse decision that felt less like impulse and more like destiny. I told them about the master's program, about wanting to specialize, about having bigger dreams than just a flatter stomach. Emma, my oldest, who's 14 and starting to navigate her own relationship with her changing body, got this look in her eyes. "So you decided your brain was more important than your belly?" she asked, and I laughed because yes, exactly that, but also so much more. "I decided that I'm already whole," I told her. "This body gave me you and your brothers. It's strong and capable and it doesn't need fixing. It needs celebrating." My middle son, Tyler, who's 11 and all logical thinking, said, "But Mom, you saved for 4 years. That's a lot of time." And he's right, it is. 4 years of automatic transfers and denying myself other things and keeping my eye on this prize I thought I wanted. But here's what I told him: sometimes the journey to one destination shows you a better path. Those 4 years taught me discipline and patience and the value of saving for something important. I'm still using those lessons, just in a different way. My youngest, Connor, who's 8 and thinks his mother hung the moon regardless of what she looks like, just said, "Can we have dessert now?" And we all laughed, because that's life, right? These profound moments mixed in with the mundane, the revelations sitting right next to the requests for ice cream. I don't believe in God or fate or anything like that, but there's definitely that tingling feeling right now of maybe this is the way it was supposed to be all along. Like all these years, I thought I was saving for one thing, but the universe, or chance, or whatever you want to call it, had other plans. Better plans. Plans that would actually serve my life instead of just changing my appearance. I thought I needed to fix my body. For 4 years, that's what I believed. Every time I looked in the mirror, every time I saw a picture of myself, every time I felt self-conscious in a bathing suit or struggled to find clothes that fit right, I thought, you need surgery. You need to fix this. It became my truth, my constant refrain, the background noise to my life. But now I think my body is just fine. More than fine, actually. My body is a testament to what I've survived, what I've created, what I've given. These stretch marks are tiger stripes, battle scars from the war of bringing life into the world. This soft stomach is a home that housed 3 miracles. These breasts fed my babies, nourished them, gave them their first comfort and security. How could I have thought any of that needed fixing? And I would rather grow my mind and my career. I would rather spend the next 2 years learning and challenging myself and becoming more skilled at something I love. I would rather invest in knowledge that will serve me for the rest of my life, that will help me help others, that will open doors I didn't even know existed. The plastic surgery would have given me, what? A few years of looking different before gravity and time did their inevitable work again? A temporary confidence boost that would fade as soon as the next insecurity took hold? But education, knowledge, expertise, those are mine forever. Nobody can take them away. They don't sag or stretch or change with time. They only grow, only compound, only become more valuable. I've been thinking a lot about what I'll tell other women who might be where I was a week ago. Women standing in their bathrooms, cataloguing their flaws, saving their money for surgical solutions to what might actually be problems of the heart and mind. And I think I'd tell them this: there's nothing wrong with plastic surgery if that's truly what you want, if it comes from a place of self-love rather than self-hatred. But take a moment. Take several moments. Ask yourself that question that changed everything for me. How is this going to serve your life? If the answer is that it will make you feel more confident, more like yourself, more able to move through the world with joy, then maybe it's right for you. But if the answer is that you're trying to erase evidence of your life, trying to meet some standard that exists only in your imagination or on social media, trying to fix something that isn't actually broken, then maybe, like me, you need to reconsider. Maybe you need to ask what you're really looking for, what you really need, and whether surgery can actually provide it. Life works in mysterious ways. That's what they say, and I'm starting to believe it's true. Not in some cosmic, predetermined sense, but in the way that staying open to possibility can lead you down paths you never expected. I expected to spend yesterday booking surgery dates and discussing recovery times. Instead, I'm enrolled in a graduate program, planning my course schedule around my work shifts and my kids' activities, feeling more excited about my future than I have in years. I keep thinking about that moment in Dr. Morrison's office, that out-of-body experience where I saw myself clearly for maybe the first time in years. I wasn't broken. I wasn't damaged. I wasn't less than. I was just different than I used to be, and different doesn't mean worse. It just means changed. And change is part of living, part of being human, part of the beautiful, messy, complicated experience of moving through time. My body tells a story. It tells the story of 3 pregnancies and 3 births. It tells the story of sleepless nights and endless nursing sessions. It tells the story of healing and adapting and continuing to function even when stretched to its limits. Why would I want to erase that story? Why would I want to pretend it never happened? My children are my greatest accomplishment, my greatest joy, and my body is the proof of their existence. It's not a flaw. It's a feature. And now, my mind is going to tell a new story. A story of a woman who decided that growth matters more than appearance. A story of second chances and new directions. A story of choosing substance over surface, depth over shallow, lasting over temporary. In 2 years, I'll have my master's degree. I'll have new career opportunities. I'll have expanded my knowledge and my capabilities. And yes, I'll still have my stretch marks and my soft stomach and my less perky breasts. But I'll also have something I wouldn't have gained from surgery, genuine pride in what I've accomplished. Tonight, after everyone else went to bed, I stood in front of that same bathroom mirror where this journey started 4 years ago. The same mirror where I first decided I needed to change my body. And I looked at myself, really looked, without judgment or criticism or plans for surgical intervention. And you know what I saw? I saw a strong woman. A capable woman. A woman who works hard and loves deeply and is about to embark on an incredible new chapter. I saw a mother, a nurse, a student, a wife. I saw a whole person, complete just as she is. The money is S. Till there, in that separate account. But now when I look at that balance, I don't see breast lifts and tummy tucks. I see textbooks and tuition payments. I see late-night studying and early morning clinical rotations. I see a future where I'm not just going through the motions of my career but actively advancing it, shaping it, making it into something meaningful and impactful. And maybe that's the real transformation I needed all along. Not a physical one, but a mental shift. Not a change in how I look, but a change in how I see myself and what I value. 4 years ago, I couldn't have made this choice. I wasn't ready. I needed those 4 years of saving and planning and thinking about surgery to get me to this point where I could choose something different, something better, something more aligned with who I really am and who I want to become. So here I am, at 42 years old, with 3 children and a nursing career and a body that bears the marks of a life well lived, about to start graduate school. Here I am, choosing to invest in my mind instead of my appearance, choosing growth over surgery, choosing substance over surface. And I feel more beautiful than any surgical procedure could have made me feel. I feel purposeful. I feel alive. I feel like I'm finally on the path I was meant to be on, even if it took a while to find it. Life works in mysterious ways. Sometimes the thing you think you need turns out to be a placeholder for what you actually need. Sometimes 4 years of saving for surgery is really 4 years of preparing for education. Sometimes the journey to one destination is really about discovering a completely different place you're meant to be. And sometimes, the most beautiful thing you can do for yourself isn't changing your body, but changing your mind about what truly matters. I'm changing lanes in my life. Taking a different route than I planned. And I've never felt more certain that I'm heading in the right direction.